Hi everybody, Dan Illman, Matt Bernier. The feature race at Del Mar on Sunday is the Grade 2 Eddie Reed Stakes, going 1 1/8 miles on the turf. It is a phenomenal betting race. You can get down on all the action with your very own DRF Bets account. An exciting new promotion for DRF Bets members is the Weekend Warrior Bonus Series. You earn up to a $180 bonus for the Travers and the Pacific Classic. You bet $25 to win on one horse in the first race at Saratoga and or Del Mar each Saturday and Sunday. Win or lose, you accrue points, earning up to that $180 bonus. Here's the field for the Eddie Reed. It's a big field. I think you can make a case for many of them. We'll take them in post position order, Matt, beginning with the European import, the #1 True Valor, who added cheek pieces last time out to win the Group 3 Ballycora Stakes in Ireland. The third place horse came back to be third in a listed stakes. If you like weight off, he's dropping 15 pounds, but I have some class concerns, and I'm not sure 1 1/8 is really his best distance.
You know, it's hard to ignore the fact that they just seem to really be intent on keeping him at the 7/8 or the flat mile over in Europe. But then again, like you say, you get that 15-pound weight break, which is really, again, you and I, we may not be the biggest weight guys, but at the same time, 15 pounds is 15 pounds. And also, he's coming over here on the heels of a group stakes victory. And I understand it may not have been the greatest group stakes you've ever seen, but we have seen horses with worse form come over to the United States and perform well. I don't love this horse, but I'm not going to talk anybody off of a 15-to-1 shot coming from Europe.
The #2 Next Shares is another horse that's somewhat questionable at this distance. He kicks hard going 6.5. He kicks hard going a flat mile. We'll see if he's able to sustain that kick going 1 1/8 miles. I thought he ran really well in the Shoemaker last time out, where he was far back as usual. He swung widest turning into the lane, and he was grinding him down late. He finished third, but he galloped out really well. I'm hopeful he gets a little bit of pace. He doesn't win very often, but give him the right setup. He might be the right price play. 8-to-1 Rafael Bejarano aboard.
I think it is specifically one of the most important pieces of any kind of a turf race is to find a horse that has a serious late kick, or at least some sort of a finish. And this horse arguably has the best late kick of the entire field. I have to be honest, I'm terrified of the piece that you brought up, the distance. I don't know about 9 furlongs for him. I think he's best at a flat mile, or maybe even a hair shorter than that. But at the end of the day, he's in good form. Richard Baltas is one of the best trainers that we've got in the country. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if he came with a run. I am just a little bit concerned about that final 1/8 of a mile.
Multiple graded stakes winner Flamboyant is versatile and proven at 1 1/8 miles, and it was nice to see him get a dream trip. You liked him in the San Francisco Mile at 11-to-1, and he shot right up the rail to win that race with a 99 buyer. Not as lucky in his most recent start, the Whittingham, a race that didn't have a big pace. So we know Flamboyant, he's kind of a mid-pack runner. He needs a little bit of help. If not a win candidate, this millionaire can usually be counted on in the single race exotics underneath.
I'd absolutely use him underneath in here. I'm not sure he's good enough to win a race like this, but I will say, and I feel like every time he shows up, I say the same thing over and over again. He is 1 to 1 1/8 miles horse. You go farther than that, he's just not nearly as good. You can go through, and I can poke holes in about 7 or 8 of his past 10 races because he's just been running at the wrong distance. If you get him at a distance that works like this one on Sunday afternoon, he's not without a chance.
Bowie's Hero won the Oceanside last year at Del Mar, so we know he likes this course, and he's earned triple-digit Beyer speed figures in 3 out of his last 4 races. He got a beautiful trip and ride by Corey Nakatani in winning the Grade 1 Kilroe over Next Year's 2 starts back. Last time out, a solid enough performance in the Shoemaker Mile. Do you think he's better at slightly shorter distances, sort of like Next Year's?
Yeah, I think a flat mile is really what he's a little bit better at. And I know he's run well at these longer distances, but he hasn't gotten over the hump. You see, he's 0 for 4 lifetime at the 9 furlong distance. And I also have to be honest, I know he ran well in that Shoemaker Mile. I just thought he was kind of flat a little bit. I expected a little bit more, especially on the heels of that Kilroe back in March. Maybe this has been the goal all along, get him ready for a spot like this. But to me, he's better shorter, and I want to see if he's going to be as good as he was 2 starts back.
The 5 Sharp Samurai scratched out of the San Diego on dirt on Saturday to opt for this more appropriate spot, and he was the king of the 3-year-old turf horses in Southern California last year, reeling off 4 consecutive wins, 2 graded efforts at Del Mar. He returned off a long layoff to score last time out, and I know he got a perfect trip against a weak field, but I wonder if he was even cranked up 100% for that race.
I just think he's a really good horse. I mean, he hasn't run a bad race basically ever in his career. I love everything about him. He has tactical speed. He can go to the lead if it's given to him. I can't imagine him on the lead in a spot like this, but I love the distance for him. I'm so glad they're not running him on dirt. I think there was a time and a place, and I just don't know if this is it for him to try the dirt. But I'll tell you what, I can't knock anything about this horse. Mark Black, Gary Stevens, they have arguably the horse to beat in here if it's not for another horse that has common ownership.
You mentioned his tactical speed, and he could be on the lead because there really aren't any confirmed front runners in this field. We'll cue the Timeform US pace projector. They do have Catapult, who set the pace in the poker way back on June of 2017 on the lead, but this is a horse that's also a proven commodity as a stalker, and he can certainly improve second start off of the John Sadler trainer change. I thought he had a much more difficult trip than Sharp Samurai last time out. This is a horse you and I've never really liked, but maybe Sadler's figured him out. And again, we've seen East Coast horses come over and just turn into beasts on the West.
Yeah, I think you want to look at him with a little bit of a forgiving sort of attitude for that most recent start. That was the first start since September of last year, so he was certainly would have been fair if he needed a race. And also early on, you brought it up, he was a little bit keyed up, keen early on, and he had to kind of hold on tight down on the inside and behind horses. And then finally, when he came with a little bit of a run, I thought he finished fine. There was a big hole that opened up, popped back to his left lead at the wire. I don't think he's impossible to be used underneath. I just have a hard time making him on top.
Eddie Reed winner of 2017 is the number 7 Hunt, who's closing in on $1 million in lifetime earnings and coming off a big Grade 1 win off the layoff in the Shoemaker Mile. Great training job by Phil D'Amato to get this horse ready off a 6-month layoff to win a Grade 1, and a great ride by Flavian Pratt, who saved ground every step of the way, angled 3 wide turning into the stretch, and Hunt did the rest. He can win at a mile, he can win at 6.5, he can win at a mile and an eighth, and he's more tactical than most people believe.
And I really think that could be the key for a horse like this, where he doesn't have to come from as far back as he was in that most recent start. He can get a little bit closer to the front end throughout the stages of the run. The concern that I have is it kind of feels like they have already made it clear, okay, we have the win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Mile. Now we're just trying to get there. And look, I'm not trying to say there's anything that he's not ready to go or anything like that, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if you got maybe his B+ effort. In this race, B+ probably not going to be good enough to win, but they'll be content if he just gets some fitness out of him and get him through the summer and get ready for the Breeders' Cup in November.
Multiplier is by the factor out of a trippy mare. You'd think he'd want to go 6 furlongs, but watching him run, he wants to run all day long. He was a winner at this distance in his turf debut 2 starts back. In the Manhattan last time out, he was just out-sprinted early, passed only a couple of tired horses late. Peter Miller's going to try to put the blinkers on, but they've tried this trick with this horse on dirt already, and it hasn't worked out. It's nice to see the buyers improve. I think this horse needs a little bit more pace than what he's going to get on Sunday.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I also wonder about distance. Does he want a little bit more? The blinkers going on, it's interesting to see that. He's always been a little bit goofy with his lead changes. The one thing I'll say about the Manhattan, he's going to be coming back into, I understand this is a pretty salty group. He was facing better horses on the East Coast. And when I first watched the Manhattan at first glance, I said, oof, you got 15 horses separated by about 2.5 lengths. Well, you've already had 2 horses come back that ran 7th and 10th, and they earned 100 buyers in their next start. So I kind of feel like he's getting a little bit of a hidden class drop, and maybe he's not good enough, but if he outran his odds, I wouldn't be surprised.
Continuing the string of big contenders, the morning line favorite, the number 9, It's in the Post. 5-2 on the line. He's banked $1.2 million. He's won 4 out of his last 5 races, and he also has that tactical speed to lead or sit. It's so valuable in a race like this. He loves the mile and an eighth. He could certainly go longer if need be. While he's 0 for 9 at Del Mar, boy, a couple of those losses, he was right there at the wire. I'm not going to say he hates this course.
No, not at all. I mean, you look at his 2 most recent runs at Del Mar. One of them was in the Breeders' Cup, not holding that against him whatsoever. And then, not to be rude, but the ride that he got from Tyler in the Del Mar handicap last year was a disaster. And look, Tyler has acquitted himself just fine. They get along, these two, the horse and rider. But I agree with you. I mean, look, he was best in that race at Del Mar last year. So I'm not going to sit here and say that he can't run on this turf course. The question comes down to price. And I said to you before we started, this may be that rare instance if you still love him. I am as big a fan of It's in the Post as you'll find. This may be one of those last instances where you might get 2-1, 5-2, 3-1 before Breeders' Cup time on him.
Prime Attraction is next. This is a horse that's capable on turf, he is capable on dirt, and he has speed. I'm going to switch that pace projector around. I'm going to put Prime Attraction on the front end. Kent DeZormo knows that this horse can get very brave when left alone on the front end. Listen, take the big cap over a wet track against Accelerate with a grain of salt. Take a lot of those dirt races with a grain of salt. The last time he ran on turf, he gave It's in the Post all that he could handle and more.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. This is a horse that he's a little bit underappreciated, but at the same time, he's not trustworthy. I mean, you and I have talked about it a number of times where he's his own worst enemy in some of these instances with the lead changes and all this sort of stuff. To me, I look at him and say, I liked him in the big cap, and whether it was the wet track or whatever else it may have been, he's been gone for quite some time. I don't know that he's going to be ready to go for a race like this. I agree. I think he'll be forwardly placed. Don't be surprised if they decide to come back in the Pacific Classic, and at that point, I wouldn't totally throw him out. 1.25 miles on dirt, he's capable.
Let's take a look at our top selections for the Eddie Reed, because you like a horse on the outside, the 11, the beautifully bred Fashion Business. This is a son of Frankel. I've been a big fan of this horse. I've been chasing him in vain for a while. He ran surprisingly well in the Manhattan at 43-1 last time out. Yes, he got some pace, but he was running late. And while we've seen the best from It's in the Post perhaps, and Hunt and all these other salty old-timers, I'm not sure we've seen the best of this horse. It's just up to Joe to get a trip.
That's kind of the way that I'm approaching him. You know, as a 3-year-old, he had shown and hinted at ability, but he was his own worst enemy in some of those instances as well, and he was also a little bit unlucky. I kind of felt like additional distance would be his friend. His run 2 starts back at a flat mile, the N1X, thought it was a really strong effort. Then he shows up in the Manhattan, thought he was overmatched, but when you really go back and watch the tape, he was wide throughout, and he finished with some real interest. He came home, got that final quarter in 23 flat. And the same argument that I made when talking about the other horse that was coming in from the East Coast, Multiplier, I think it's almost like a hidden class drop in this spot. And I think he's going to be a square price in a race like this. He needs a little bit of pace, but I don't know that we've seen the best from him just yet. And I want to take a shot and find out if we do get that on Sunday.
I'm hoping Prime Attraction sets the pace for both of us and at least gives everyone a fair chance to win. Next Cheris has shown a nice kick in several of his races, including the Killrow and the Shoemaker. Again, the 1 1/8, yes, it's a question mark. The way he galloped out at the end of his last race, though, makes me think perhaps a 1 1/8 is within his scope. He is 8-1 on the morning line. I think that's a fair price. I'm going 2-7-8-4. Give me numbers beginning with the 11, Fashion Business.
Yeah, 11, 5, 9, and 7. This is a race I know it's been downgraded a few years ago. I look at this and say, this is a grade 1 race, and maybe a grade 2 in name only. This is a grade 1 caliber field.
I think it's the best betting race of the weekend by far, and you can bet it with your very own DRF Bets account. And if you are a member already, you have the Weekend Warrior bonus series where you can earn up to a $180 bonus for the Travers and Pacific Classic. Approximate post time for the grade 2 Eddie Reed, 5:30 Pacific. Best of luck.